When the ocean fights back, even the most experienced are vulnerable. From untamed coastlines to controlled tanks, orcas have shown they're more than just performers. They are skilled, intelligent hunters. Scientists, trainers, and thrill-seekers alike have learned the hard way. One wrong move can turn awe into terror in an instant. In this video, these encounters reveal the cunning and coordination of these apex predators, challenging what we thought we knew. Each story is a chilling reminder that the sea belongs to its own. Watch till the end to see how quickly wonder can transform into a fight for survival. On August 14, 2024, marine biologist Khalith Voss, filmmaker Thorin Rael, and tracker Leora Fenwick embarked on an expedition off the coast of British Columbia to capture rare footage of orcas hunting in the wild. Khalith Voss, a marine biologist known for her calm under pressure, had dedicated her life to understanding orca communication and intelligence. Her research focused on decoding whale behavior through years of fieldwork and acoustic studies. Thorin Rael was a seasoned wildlife filmmaker with a passion for documenting untamed marine life. With over a decade of experience, he specialized in underwater cinematography and sought to capture the raw beauty of the natural world, pushing the limits of filmmaking technology. Leora Fenwick, an experienced tracker, had grown up along the coast where she learned to track orcas and other marine creatures. Her deep connection to the sea, passed down from her father, made her an expert at interpreting environmental signs and predicting orca movement. Together, they formed a skilled team, combining scientific knowledge, filmmaking expertise, and local insight to document the orca's natural hunting techniques. The morning began with glassy seas stretching endlessly under a pale sky. The small boat moved smoothly through calm waters, leaving a faint white trail behind it. The air carried the cool scent of salt and seaweed. As they reached a narrow channel bordered by cliffs, Khalith spotted faint ripples ahead, the telltale sign of movement. Moments later, black fins broke the surface in a perfect rhythm. A pod of killer whales glided toward them, their presence silent yet commanding. The crew's excitement was immediate. Cameras rolled, microphones clicked, and Thorin captured wide shots as the orcas surfaced in unison. Each massive body cut through the water with grace and precision. For the first hour, everything unfolded perfectly. The animals were calm, curious, and seemingly unbothered by the vessel. The team watched in awe, careful to maintain distance. Then something shifted. Khalith noticed a strange coordination among the pod. Instead of traveling past the boat, the orcas began circling it, their movements synchronized and deliberate. One surfaced close enough for a spray of mist to drift over the deck. Another dived beneath the hull, vanishing into the dark blue. A low swell rocked the vessel. At first, the group assumed it was natural ocean movement, but the swells grew stronger. The orcas were slapping their tails against the surface, not randomly, but in a pattern. Within moments, the sea turned turbulent. Massive waves rolled from multiple directions, colliding against the small boat. The crew grabbed the railings as water splashed over the sides. Thorin shouted for everyone to steady themselves as he tried to secure his camera. Leora reached for a drifting device that had come loose, a floating camera rig sliding toward the edge. She stretched out an arm, leaning too far over the side. The vessel lurched again and she lost her balance. Her body hit the freezing water with a loud splash. Instantly, the orcas reacted. The largest among them turned sharply toward her, slicing through the surface with terrifying speed. Khalith's heart pounded as she saw the fin close in, circling Leora like a predator assessing its target. The creature slowed, drifting beneath her before surfacing again just meters away. Thorin gripped the wheel, steering the boat toward her while Khalith grabbed a rope ladder and prepared to throw it overboard. Another wave crashed against the hull, lifting the boat high before slamming it back down. The channel echoed with the thunder of waves and the hiss of spray. The orcas continued their strange, deliberate movements, surrounding both the boat and the struggling swimmer. The dark shapes of the orcas moved with eerie precision beneath the surface, their sleek bodies slicing through the swirling water. The waves they had created rolled in heavy bursts, each one stronger than the last. Leora struggled to keep her head above the freezing current, her limbs numb and heavy. Every movement felt slower, weighed down by the cold and panic. The nearest orca tilted its head, one large eye turning upward to watch her. It circled again, gliding silently, its dorsal fin rising like a blade through the sea. Kalith threw the rope ladder over the side, the boat pitching violently as Thorin tried to steady the controls. Foam and spray drenched them as they fought the motion. Leora kicked weakly, reaching for the rope, but a new surge from beneath lifted her into the air before dropping her back down with brutal force. The impact sent ripples of pain through her body. The orca's movement had not been random. It was deliberate, testing, as though the creature was gauging how she would react. The rest of the pod moved closer, forming a half circle around the scene. Their coordination was uncanny. The air was filled with sharp hisses and low hums from their calls beneath the surface. The boat shuddered again as one powerful tail slap sent another wave rolling toward them. Thorin kept the vessel pointed against the current, using every bit of strength to prevent a capsize. Kalith leaned out, extending her arm as far as she dared, her focus fixed on the exhausted swimmer. Finally, Leora's fingers brushed the rope. With one last push, she caught it. Kalith and Thorin pulled in unison, inch by inch, as icy spray crashed over them. The boat tilted dangerously to one side, but they refused to let go. The moment Leora's hand gripped the metal rung, the largest orca surged upward again, its massive head breaking the surface. The wave that followed nearly overturned the vessel. For a second, the entire boat hung suspended before slamming back down. Then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the sea grew still. The pod slowed its movements, circling once before vanishing into the depths. Kalith and Thorin hauled Leora over the railing. She collapsed onto the deck, coughing and shaking violently. Her skin was pale and her hands trembled as she clutched the side of the boat. Around them, the ocean was calm once more. Only faint ripples remained where the creatures had disappeared. The silence felt heavy, broken only by the distant call of seabirds overhead. Hours later, when they reached shore, the team was still in shock. Leora suffered mild hypothermia and bruises, but she was alive. The footage on Thorin's camera revealed every moment in haunting detail. The waves, the coordination, and the eerie intelligence in the orca's movements. Experts who later reviewed it agreed it was unlike any behavior ever recorded. The event changed their view of the ocean forever. The encounter was not a simple accident, but a chilling reminder of how powerful and strategic these predators could be. For the team, the day became known as the moment when the sea itself seemed to think, plan, and strike back. On July 14, 2015, the morning sun glimmered over the coastal city of Vladivostok as Anton Belov walked through the quiet halls of the marine park. At 34, Anton was one of Russia's most respected marine trainers, known for his calm patience and deep fascination with ocean life. Since childhood, he had been drawn to large sea mammals, captivated by their strength and intelligence. After years of studying marine biology and accumulating countless hours of training, Anton had earned his place as the lead handler for Moros, a young male orca known for his power and unpredictability. His dedication to understanding these majestic creatures went beyond training. Anton often spent hours observing the animals in silence, building a connection of trust with them. His meticulous approach and quiet authority made him a natural leader, even with the wildest of animals. Moros had grown rapidly, displaying a mix of intelligence and stubbornness that challenged even the most skilled trainers. At over 5 meters long and weighing more than 4 tons, he was both majestic and intimidating. Anton had spent months building trust, feeding him, and guiding his movements through carefully timed sessions. On that warm summer day, the training began like any other. The stands were half filled with visitors eager to watch the morning rehearsal, while staff members checked equipment and water conditions. Anton stepped onto the narrow platform beside the pool, the sound of splashing water echoing through the large enclosure. Moros swam in wide circles, his dorsal fin cutting through the surface with effortless grace. The first part of the session went smoothly. The orca performed several leaps, slapping the water with immense power before diving deep again. Anton gestured for him to approach the glass wall, where he offered commands for turns and rolls. Each movement was met with precision, the bond between human and animal seemingly strong. Then, without warning, everything shifted. Moros's behavior changed in an instant. His movements became erratic, faster, and less controlled. The trainers watching nearby sensed tension, but before anyone could react, the orca surged forward, ramming Anton with violent force. The impact sent him crashing against the reinforced glass, knocking the air from his lungs. A second hit followed almost immediately, this time dragging him downward into the churning blue water. The crowd gasped as the calm pool transformed into chaos. Anton's arms flailed as he tried to surface, but Moroz held him tight, thrashing side to side. Each movement created waves that splashed over the platform, sending trainers running for safety ropes. Alarms blared as staff rushed to intervene, throwing flotation devices and banging poles against the tank to distract the animal. But Moroz was too strong and too focused. He dragged Anton deeper, twisting and turning in the confined space as bubbles and red streaks clouded the water. For what felt like endless seconds, no one could reach them. The team's efforts failed to break the orca's grip or draw it away. When Moroz finally released his trainer, Anton's body floated motionless near the surface. The pool that had once echoed with excitement now fell into heavy silence, broken only by the sound of water rippling where the tragedy had unfolded. The silence that followed the tragedy was heavy and haunting. As Anton's body was lifted from the pool, the trainers and staff stood frozen, unable to believe what had just happened before their eyes. The once vibrant facility, filled with the sound of splashing water and music, now echoed with confusion and disbelief. Visitors were quickly guided out of the viewing area while emergency crews arrived and performed desperate resuscitation attempts on the poolside deck. Despite their efforts, it soon became clear that nothing could be done. Anton Belov was gone, his life claimed by the very creature he had cared for so deeply. Within hours, news of the accident spread through the city. Television crews gathered outside the marine park as officials cordoned off the training area. Moroz, the orca involved in the fatal event, remained inside the tank, circling slowly near the glass, its movements calm yet unreadable. Many of the staff members who had worked alongside Anton for years struggled to hold back tears. For them, it was not just the loss of a colleague, but a blow to the heart of everything they believed about their work. An internal investigation began immediately. Experts reviewed footage from the pool cameras, studying every movement leading up to the attack. It showed no sign of provocation, only a moment of sudden aggression that no one could have predicted. Behavioral scientists explained that orcas in captivity often experience stress and frustration due to confinement and repetitive routines. Some suggested that Moroz's behavior might have been triggered by instinct rather than intent, a reminder of the animal's wild nature that cannot truly be controlled. In the days that followed, tributes poured in from across the world. Fellow trainers, scientists, and marine enthusiasts remembered Anton for his dedication, compassion, and courage. Flowers and notes were placed outside the park gates, while social media was filled with images of him smiling beside the orcas he loved. At the same time, questions about animal captivity grew louder. Protesters gathered outside the park, calling for changes in marine entertainment practices and the release of performing orcas to sanctuaries. The management eventually suspended all shows, leaving the massive stadium quiet. Moroz was moved to a restricted tank for observation, away from public view. The trainers who once interacted with him daily now kept their distance, feeling both wary and saddened by the separation. Months later, Anton's family established a foundation in his name, dedicated to marine research and promoting safer wildlife practices. His story became a somber lesson shared in documentaries and training programs, reminding everyone of the thin line between fascination and danger. The water that had once shimmered with life and excitement now carried a different weight, a symbol of power, respect, and loss intertwined beneath its surface. On July 18, 2025, 26-year-old social media influencer Kaelin Drex arrived in Iceland's Westfjords with one goal: to capture a viral video of orcas in their natural habitat. Known for his daring travel clips, Kaelin had built a large following online by blending nature, adventure, and personal challenges. His fearless attitude and bright personality made him a favorite among his audience, who eagerly awaited his next bold move. Kaelin's posts were a mix of stunning landscapes and high-risk activities, always designed to inspire and entertain. This trip, however, was meant to be something special. With a deep fascination for marine life, he aimed to film orcas up close, using a waterproof camera mounted on his small inflatable boat. Having spent weeks studying fjord routes and tracking weather patterns, Kaelin's meticulous planning reflected his growing desire to push the boundaries of both his content and his connection with the natural world. That morning, the sea was still and silver under the pale light. Mist hovered over the fjord as Kaelin pushed his inflatable boat into the water, paddling out with quiet excitement. The air was cold, carrying the scent of salt and seaweed. Mountains surrounded him on both sides, their slopes streaked with snow even in July. His camera blinked red, recording every moment as he drifted farther from shore. The sound of his paddle broke the silence until he noticed smooth black fins slicing through the surface ahead. A pod of orcas had appeared, gliding in perfect rhythm through the narrow channel. Kalen's heartbeat quickened. He steadied his camera, smiling into the lens as the powerful animals surfaced and dove again, sending bursts of spray into the air. At first, the orcas moved peacefully, following the trail of seals along the rocks. Their calls echoed softly beneath the water, haunting yet beautiful. The calm scene gave Kalen confidence, and he edged the boat closer to them, trying to capture the perfect angle. His small craft bobbed gently, the water dark and clear below. Then, without warning, one of the larger orcas broke away from the group. Its black and white body rose higher, closer, its movement sudden and direct. The inflatable boat rocked sharply as a wave from the orca's powerful stroke lifted it on one side. Kalen froze, gripping the rope at the front, as the animal turned and rammed the boat's side with tremendous force. The sound echoed through the fjord, and the shock threw him backward into the freezing water. The cold struck him like a wall. The camera slipped from his hand and drifted out of reach as bubbles and foam surrounded him. The orca circled back, its dorsal fin cutting the surface just meters away. Kalen's breath came in ragged bursts as he kicked toward the boat. But each movement seemed to draw the creature closer. The water trembled with its strength. For a moment, the massive shadow moved directly beneath him, the dark shape stretching wider than the inflatable itself. The stillness broke again as the orca brushed past, its motion smooth yet filled with unmistakable power. Kalen's heart pounded as he fought to stay above the icy surface, realizing that what began as a playful chase for views had become a dangerous encounter with the wild. The orca's fin vanished beneath the dark surface, leaving Kalen alone in the freezing water. His hands trembled as he reached for the rope tied to the inflatable, his strength fading with every passing second. The cold bit deep into his muscles, slowing his movements, but instinct pushed him to fight on. Waves rocked the tiny craft, slapping against its sides as he pulled himself hand over hand, gasping for air between each desperate motion. His numb fingers slipped twice before he finally managed to haul himself halfway over the edge. The orca appeared again, gliding just below the surface. Its shape passed beneath him like a dark wave, powerful and controlled. Kalen froze, barely breathing, afraid to draw attention. For a few tense moments, the creature lingered nearby, circling slowly, as if studying the struggling human above. Then, just as suddenly as it had come, it turned away and vanished into the endless blue. The water settled, calm and silent once more, the faint splash of the retreating pod echoing through the fjord. Kalen collapsed into the boat, shivering uncontrollably. His soaked clothes clung to his skin, and his hands burned as they gripped the sides of the inflatable. Every breath felt like ice in his chest. The camera he had used moments earlier floated several meters away, spinning slowly in the ripples, its small red light still blinking before fading out. He stared at it in disbelief, realizing the footage and his near disaster were drifting away into the deep. When he finally reached shore, his body was stiff from cold, and exhaustion blurred his thoughts. Locals helped him wrap in blankets, shocked by his story. Word of the encounter spread quickly online once he shared what little footage he recovered from his backup device. Many praised his bravery, while others criticized his recklessness for approaching wild predators alone. Days later, Kalen watched the clip again in silence. The image of the orca striking his boat replayed in his mind, reminding him how fragile his control had truly been. The sea had granted him mercy that day, not fame. Though he continued filming, he no longer chased danger for attention. The lesson stayed with him, that the ocean's beauty comes with power that demands respect. What nearly became a viral stunt had turned into a humbling encounter between human ambition and nature's dominance. On July 12, 2019, marine ecologist Celine Yara began another long day at the floating research station, anchored in the calm waters of the Marlborough Sounds, New Zealand. The station, built on sturdy pontoons, had been her workplace for nearly 6 months. Known for her meticulous approach and sharp scientific mind, Celine had devoted her life to studying marine life, focusing on the behavior of large ocean predators and their changing migration patterns. Her passion for the sea began at a young age, and she had spent years pursuing a career that combined her love for the ocean with her drive to protect it. Alongside her assistant Ravi Patel, She monitored the local ecosystem, collecting vital data on water temperature, currents, and whale activity. Their floating base was quiet and efficient, surrounded by the rhythmic sounds of the sea, as Celine's deep connection to the environment allowed her to notice even the subtlest changes in the waters around them. That week had started like any other. The weather was clear, the waves gentle, and their work progressing smoothly. However, everything changed when an unexpected pod of orcas appeared earlier than usual. Their black and white shapes moved through the blue water with astonishing grace, their tall dorsal fins slicing the surface like blades. Celine and Ravi watched in fascination, noting their calls and patterns of movement. At first, it seemed like a rare opportunity. An early arrival meant valuable data. But within hours, their excitement gave way to unease. The orcas did not behave as they normally did. Instead of keeping a distance, they began circling the research station closely, diving beneath the pontoons and surfacing beside the supply boat. The water churned around them as they moved with deliberate, focused intent. On the second day, their curiosity grew bolder. One orca rammed the side of the small boat tethered to the station, causing the hull to tremble with a deep echoing thud. Equipment rattled, ropes strained, and Celine could feel the vibrations through the deck under her boots. By midday, the behavior became more aggressive. The pod began striking the pontoons repeatedly, as if testing the structure. Every collision sent ripples across the entire platform. Ravi tried to secure loose gear, but the rocking made it difficult to stay balanced. The air filled with splashes and deep calls from below, eerie sounds that seemed to echo off the surrounding cliffs. The orcas moved in coordinated patterns, communicating through sharp clicks and low rumbles that carried through the hull. As the hours passed, exhaustion began to set in. Sleep was impossible with the constant motion and sound. On the third morning, the pod returned once more, circling the research base in tight formation. Their behavior was no longer random. Each impact against the floating station felt deliberate, almost experimental. Then, as Celine and Ravi moved toward the edge to monitor their equipment, a sudden strike rocked the boat harder than before. The jolt sent Ravi slipping across the slick deck, his body sliding toward the open water. Celine's heart leaped as she lunged forward, grabbing his wrist just before he could fall overboard. Water splashed up from the orcas' tails as they surged nearby, their black forms gliding beneath the surface in synchronized motion. She hauled him back to safety, both trembling as another thud echoed through the structure. The orcas continued circling, their intelligence on full display, calm, curious, and powerful enough to remind everyone watching who truly ruled the sea. Celine steadied herself as the platform swayed beneath her feet, the water around the station rippling with motion. The orcas did not leave after the near fall. Instead, they gathered again, swimming in slow, deliberate circles. Their fins sliced through the surface with quiet precision. Each movement carried a sense of awareness, as if the creatures were studying the humans as much as the humans studied them. Celine felt the air grow tense, filled with the rhythmic sound of waves striking metal and the occasional hollow thud of impact. The pod continued to ram the pontoons in patterns, testing the structure's strength. With every strike, the station creaked and shifted slightly, the ropes straining against the tension. Ravi, still shaken, began checking the equipment to ensure nothing valuable had fallen into the water. The small supply boat, tied a few meters away, floated helplessly in the current. One of the larger orcas approached it and pushed the bow gently before striking again, this time hard enough to tilt the vessel to one side. The metal hull groaned under the pressure. For a moment, silence returned. Then, without warning, two orcas lunged simultaneously from opposite sides, hitting the boat with enormous power. The sound carried through the air like thunder. The smaller vessel rolled dangerously, the motor spluttering as water rushed in over the edge. Celine watched in disbelief, realizing that the animals were not attacking out of hunger but rather out of curiosity, almost like an experiment. They were powerful enough to destroy, yet controlled enough not to cause total collapse. The orcas circled again, their white patches glowing faintly beneath the green surface. One grabbed a loose rope in its mouth, tugging it playfully before letting go. The entire platform rocked, and Celine gripped the railing tightly, her knuckles pale against the cold metal. Time seemed to stretch endlessly as they endured the behavior, helpless to stop it but determined not to panic. The creatures eventually began to drift away, their tall fins cutting through the water as they moved toward the open sea. The sound of the engines from the distant mainland was the first human noise they had heard in days. When calm finally returned, Selene and Ravi sat on the deck, breathing deeply as the ocean settled around them. The water grew still, the sky turning golden as the sun lowered toward the horizon. The quiet felt almost unreal after the chaos that had consumed them for 3 days. Equipment was damaged, ropes torn, and the smaller boat nearly useless, but they were safe. That evening, Selene wrote detailed notes about the event, describing how the pod displayed signs of coordination and testing behavior. In the days that followed, the incident spread quickly among local researchers and news outlets. Scientists debated whether the orca's behavior was playful or territorial. Some called it a rare case of learned curiosity, while others viewed it as a reminder of the growing tension between wildlife and human presence at sea. For Selene, the experience left a mark deeper than any research finding. It was proof that even the most studied creatures could surprise those who thought they understood them. The ocean had reminded her of its intelligence, its strength, and the fragile balance that kept humans afloat in its vast and unpredictable world. On October 17, 2022, 31-year-old Kaida Val prepared her sailboat for the final stretch of a regional race off the coast of False Bay, South Africa. Known among her peers for precision and calm focus, Kaida had grown up near the water, learning to navigate boats before she was old enough to drive. Sailing was not just her passion but her identity. Every race offered her a mix of freedom and control, where wind, tide, and instinct became one. Her crewmate Liam was her longtime racing partner, steady, strong, and loyal through every rough tide. That morning they set out beneath a pale sky, their sleek white vessel cutting smoothly through the early waves. The wind carried a cool edge as they steered into a narrow strait lined by jagged rocks. It was one of the most challenging routes of the competition, where currents shifted without warning. Kaida adjusted the sails with practiced movements, her mind fixed on speed and balance. The sea glimmered under the sun, its surface smooth but alive beneath. Far off, a few dark fins appeared and vanished again. At first, she thought they were dolphins, a common sight near False Bay. But as the shapes drew closer, she realized they were much larger, moving with deliberate coordination. A pod of orcas had joined the waters around them. The sleek bodies glided through the waves, black and white against the deep blue. Kaida felt a rush of awe as the creatures surfaced, exhaling in bursts of mist. For a few moments, she watched in silence, mesmerized by their beauty and power. The ocean seemed peaceful, until one of the orcas veered sharply toward the boat. The calm changed in an instant. The first impact came like a thunderclap. The orca rammed the stern, the whole vessel jolting violently to the side. Kaida's knees buckled as ropes whipped across the deck. Liam grabbed a line to steady the mast while Kaida struggled to hold her footing. The water erupted beside them as the orca surfaced again, twisting its body and striking the hull a second time. The force threw the sail out of alignment, snapping it against the wind. Before Kaida could regain control, the boat tilted sharply. She reached for the railing, but the next surge of water swept her off balance. Cold waves swallowed her whole as she plunged into the sea. The shock of the icy water stole her breath instantly. Her eyes opened to swirling bubbles and shadowy movement below. Through the haze, she saw the dark outline of the orca circling her, its tail slicing the current with controlled strength. The waves tossed her against the side of the boat as she tried to orient herself. Another sudden motion below sent a whirl of foam spinning around her, pushing her under once more. She kicked upward, breaking the surface only for a moment before the current dragged her sideways again. The boat loomed just meters away, but it felt unreachable in the chaos of waves, wind, and shadow moving beneath. Kaida's arms burned as she fought to stay above the surface. The waves churned violently, the cold biting into her skin. The orca continued to circle, each movement creating pressure waves that rolled her helplessly through the water. Its massive dorsal fin sliced the sea nearby, followed by the deep shadow of its body gliding beneath her. Every time she surfaced, spray filled her mouth, the salt stinging her throat. She tried to steady her breathing, forcing her limbs to move despite the exhaustion creeping in. The world had shrunk to noise, water, and motion. Liam clung to the deck above, gripping a rope and shouting for help. The sail flapped wildly and the mast leaned dangerously. He threw a line toward her, the wind catching it mid-air before it splashed nearby. Kaida reached for it, her hands trembling, fingers slipping once before she finally grabbed hold. The strain of the rope against her palms burned as she was pulled slowly toward the vessel. Another swell pushed her under again, spinning her in the foam. but she held on with all her strength. The orca made one last pass beside her, brushing the underside of the hull with a deep, echoing thud. It was not an attack anymore, but a final display of dominance before fading into the deep. Moments later, Kaida felt strong arms pull her up onto the deck. Her chest heaved as she collapsed on the wet boards, water streaming from her gear. The sea around them grew still once again, the pod's faint shapes disappearing beyond the swells. When the race ended hours later, their boat drifted into the harbor, damaged but afloat. The story spread quickly among the sailing community. Experts later explained that orcas sometimes interacted with vessels out of curiosity, testing their strength against unfamiliar intruders. Kaida and Liam were left shaken, but grateful to be alive. The wrecked stern and torn sails were reminders of how thin the line could be between sport and survival. From that day on, Kaida's races carried new meaning, not just for victory, but for respect toward the vast, unpredictable sea. On September 17, 2019, Lucia Marquez, a 32-year-old animal trainer, prepared for another morning show at a marine park near Valencia, Spain. She had worked with marine animals for over a decade, earning a reputation for calm confidence and a deep understanding of ocean life. Her bond with orcas was admired by many. Among all the creatures she trained, Tajo, a young male orca, was her favorite. He was energetic, curious, and often playful, displaying a blend of innocence and raw power. For Lucia, every session was not just work, but a connection built on trust and instinct. The crowd gathered early that day, filling the seats with excitement. The sun glistened on the water's surface as upbeat music echoed through the stadium. Lucia stood at the edge of the pool, wetsuit glimmering under the lights, waiting for Tajo to make his entrance. The gates opened, and the orca surged forward, slicing through the water with smooth, practiced grace. The first half of the show unfolded perfectly. Tajo leaped through hoops, balanced balls, and splashed water toward the cheering audience. Every movement was timed, every gesture coordinated with precision. Lucia smiled as she signaled for the next routine, a synchronized dive that ended with both trainer and whale surfacing together in a controlled rise. For a moment, everything looked flawless, but then, as Lucia swam toward the center, Tajo changed direction. Instead of surfacing beside her, he dove deep and swung sharply upward. A massive wave followed as his body crashed against the water with thunderous force, sending a heavy wall of spray across the pool. Lucia felt the impact beneath her feet, the shock lifting her off balance. In a split second, she was thrown into the air before plunging into the deep end. The world around her turned into chaos. Underwater bubbles surrounded her as she tried to regain orientation. The sound of roaring water filled her ears and shadows moved above. When she surfaced, she gasped for air, barely catching her breath before another surge hit. Tajo had turned again, circling fast. Each movement of his tail created waves that tossed her like a leaf. The once controlled pool became a storm of foam and ripples. Lucia kicked toward the platform, trying to steady herself, but the current pulled her back. Her snorkel was gone, gloves floating away as Tajo's massive form glided past, brushing the surface close enough to spray water across her face. Trainers Diego and Marisol, who had been on standby, leaped into action. They dived into the water, moving through the turbulent surface toward Lucia. The crowd, once filled with cheers, had fallen silent. Every moment grew heavier. The young orca circled again, creating a whirl of water that forced Lucia under once more. She could see nothing but shifting blue light. The power of the ocean compressed into a single pool. Panic began to rise as she fought to reach the surface. The playful show had turned into a desperate fight for control. Lucia's body twisted in the swirling current as the orca's wake tossed her back and forth. Her arms reached upward through the chaos until a firm grip caught her wrist. Diego pulled with all his strength while Marisol steadied from behind. The water roared as Tajo circled again, sending another powerful wave crashing into the wall of the pool. The impact pushed all three trainers to the edge, scraping their suits and arms. For a moment, it felt as if the entire pool was alive, driven by the force of a creature far stronger than any human could control. Lucia's chest burned from exhaustion, her vision blurred from the salt and motion. The two trainers braced themselves and guided her upward toward the shallow platform. Tajo passed below one last time, his smooth black back gliding just beneath the surface before turning toward the deeper end. The water finally began to settle, and silence replaced the noise of splashing and shouts. Slowly, the waves smoothed into ripples. Lucia collapsed onto the wet platform, gasping as water poured from her mask. Her wetsuit was torn along one side, her shoulder bruised, and her knees scraped from the tiles. Around her, Diego and Marisol checked for injuries while park staff helped them out of the pool. The audience sat frozen, unsure of what they had just witnessed. What had begun as entertainment had become a moment of raw power and danger. The park quickly cleared the stands while first aid teams treated Lucia for shock and minor wounds. Later, animal behaviorists studied the event carefully. They concluded that Tajo had not acted out of anger or hunger, but instinct. The young orca had simply tested boundaries, responding to movement and energy like it would in the wild. In the days that followed, Lucia reflected on the incident with a heavy heart. The bond she had built with Tajo was not broken, but it had changed. She had witnessed the true strength of nature within a creature she once thought she fully understood. The event served as a reminder to everyone watching that even in controlled environments, wild instincts can awaken without warning.